For the vast majority of us, the hunt for sustenance concludes not in a blood-soaked savanna, but under the fluorescent lights of a supermarket aisle. But for our primordial ancestors, every sunrise heralded another desperate struggle for survival, a relentless search for anything that could quell the gnawing ache of hunger. This was a world defined by a single, brutal imperative: eat or be eaten.
In this precarious existence, our earliest forebears were scarcely distinguishable from the animals they lived alongside. Their lives were a constant migration, a nomadic dance dictated by the seasons and the availability of resources. They were gatherers, their hands searching the earth for sustenance, the sweet burst of a berry, the starchy promise of a root, the protein of a snail or an unguarded bird's egg. They were also opportunists, scavengers trailing in the wake of true predators, perhaps driving a smaller carnivore from its kill, or feasting on the decaying remnants of another's conquest.
To remain in one place was to invite disaster. It meant exhausting every edible plant, every grub, every morsel within reach, while simultaneously becoming a predictable target for the great predators that stalked the shadows. And so they moved, their world circumscribed by what their feet could traverse before nightfall.
The first true hunt was not an act of glory, but of desperation. A thrown stone, a sharpened stick. These were the humble extensions of human will. Within these early hominins, a revolutionary spark was kindling. The capacity for abstract thought, and more importantly, for cooperation. A lone hunter was prey. A coordinated group, however, became a force of terrifying ingenuity. Through shared strategy and collective action, they could now aspire to challenge larger quarry: antelope, wild horses, even the mighty bison. A cornered beast, facing a circle of intelligent, collaborating primates, was facing something entirely new on this planet. Then came the catalyst that would forever alter the human trajectory: fire. At first, it was not created, but captured, a living treasure stolen from a lightning strike or a wildfire and guarded with religious devotion. To let the embers die was to plunge back into the cold, predator-haunted dark. The campfire became the blazing heart of their world, a bastion of warmth and security. Here, in the flickering light, a profound transformation occurred. Meat, roots, and tubers held over the flames were not just rendered safer and more palatable, they were biochemically unlocked, cooking pre-digested tough fibers and proteins, delivering a massive caloric surplus. Suddenly, far less food was needed to sustain the body, freeing up vital time and, crucially, metabolic energy. This energy would fuel the most complex and expensive organ known to nature: the human brain. Around this communal hearth, something else began to form. In the shared moments of consumption, surrounded by kin, the grunts and gestures of basic communication began to weave themselves into the first threads of language. The fire was the first theater, the first school, the first temple. It was here, sharing stories and strategies, that the family group began to coalesce into the clan, forging the social bonds that would enable humanity's ascent. The hunt had made them predators, but the fire was beginning to make them human. For survival, there was a primal imperative: to transmit the hard-won wisdom of a lifetime from one generation to the next, to teach the young the ways of a perilous world, and to share the vital intelligence that meant the difference between life and death. This exchange of knowledge found its ultimate catalyst in a force of nature, tamed and brought into the heart of the human circle: fire. The hearth became a crucible of innovation. It offered more than just warmth against the encroaching dark. It unlocked a new world of nutrition, rendering tough flesh and fibrous roots into high-calorie, life-sustaining meals. But its power extended beyond the cooking pit. A simple, sharpened stick, its tip hardened in the embers until it was nearly petrified, was transformed. It was no longer just wood. It was a spear, an extension of human will, durable and deadly. With this, the hunt was revolutionized. It became an enterprise of greater certainty and efficiency, demanding less time while yielding far more.
This technological leap triggered a seismic shift in the very structure of human society. A surplus of food, once an unimaginable luxury, began to fuel a steady growth in population. The small, vulnerable family unit gave way to a more resilient and powerful social organism, the clan. To live and move as one was to possess an undeniable advantage. Together, they could mount a formidable defense against the great predators of the age and against the existential threat of other human groups.
Within the collective, a new social safety net was woven. The children of the clan were the children of all, their care and protection a shared responsibility. The burdens of maintaining a home, of preparing food and skins, were distributed. And with this newfound security, our ancestors first into the Near East. Millennia later, as the great glaciers of the Ice Age began their slow retreat, Cro-Magnon peoples fanned out across a newly greening Europe, gradually displacing their evolutionary cousins, the Neanderthals, from the most fertile territories.
Their expansion was driven by ever-improving technology. The fire-hardened spear was eventually tipped with razor-sharp flint, a far more lethal point. Then came a weapon of unprecedented power and range, the bow and arrow. With this invention, humanity's ascent was complete. We were, without question, the planet's apex predator. Across the vast landscapes, evidence remains of epic, coordinated hunts, ventures that required the cooperation of several clans. Their targets were the megafauna of the Pleistocene, the colossal mammoth, and the formidable woolly rhinoceros. The strategy was one of brilliant, brutal simplicity. To incite panic, to force a stampede of colossal bodies toward a preordained trap, a treacherous bog, or the unforgiving edge of a high cliff. Immense effort was expended building stone funnels and enclosures, guiding the terrified herds toward their doom.
Once trapped, the helpless animals were dispatched with a volley of spears and stones. Entire herds perished in a single bloody event. It was a strategy of overwhelming success, but also of profound waste. Without methods for long-term preservation, the sheer volume of meat was too much to consume. Great portions of the kill would inevitably spoil, a feast for scavengers. Only the hides and bones, materials for shelter, tools, and clothing could be fully utilized.
In this world, our ancestors honed other skills. They became masters of stone, crafting an array of specialized tools. They built dwellings from wood and animal skins, or dug shelters into the earth itself. They learned to stitch furs into clothing that could defy the bitterest cold. And they turned to the water, fashioning primitive hooks and harpoons from bone, adding the bounty of rivers and coastlines to their diet.
This was the zenith of the hunter-gatherer society. The clan was an all-encompassing world, a society bound by the sacred ties of kinship. Property, shelter, and food were held in common. All labored for the good of all. Yet within this communal existence, strict roles and hierarchies were already taking shape. It was a world of shared survival, but one that held, dormant within its very structure, the seeds of a future defined not by what was held in common, but by what would set one person above another.
In the unforgiving wilderness of the Stone Age, survival was not a solitary endeavor. It was a symphony of shared purpose, a collective struggle where the essential tasks of the hunt, the gathering of sustenance, and the nurturing of the next generation were obligations borne by all. An individual's place within this fragile society was not a matter of choice, but a destiny dictated by the unwritten laws of age, of gender, and of one's proven utility to the clan.
At the apex of this social architecture stood the elders. Whether this authority was vested in a single, weathered patriarch or a council of the most seasoned and respected members
remains a question shrouded in the mists of prehistory. Theirs was the immense responsibility of governance. They were the arbiters of disputes, the distributors of precious resources, and, most critically, the living libraries of their people. Within their minds resided the accumulated wisdom of generations, the sacred stories, the intricate customs, and the survival techniques that were the clan's most valuable inheritance.
The domain of the adult male was, above all, the hunt. It was a world of risk and reward, of tracking the great beasts that roamed the vast primordial landscapes. But their duties extended beyond the pursuit of game. In an era of scarce resources, conflict between clans was an ever-present threat. When territorial disputes erupted, it was the men who took up arms, their spears and stone axes the final argument in defending their community's very right to exist. In this division of labor, gathering became the near-exclusive province of women. They were the steady heart of the community, their knowledge of the land providing a reliable buffer against the uncertainties of the hunt. Accompanied by the children of the clan, they foraged for edible roots, berries, and fruits, a constant, vital stream of nourishment. Their hands also tended the sacred fire, the nucleus of the settlement, and skillfully stitched animal hides into the clothing that shielded their kin from the biting cold. They were the watchers, the nurturers, the silent anchors of daily life. Yet, survival alone does not define humanity. As the relentless struggle for sustenance eased, even slightly, a new landscape opened. The landscape of the mind. It was in the flickering firelight of these ancient communities that the first stirrings of religion took hold. A profound belief began to form that each clan was spiritually descended from a specific animal, a totem. This sacred ancestor could be prey. This was not mere superstition. It was a sacred covenant, a way of weaving their own existence into the larger tapestry of the natural world. Scholarly debate continues to this day. Was it forbidden to kill one's totem animal, a revered ancestor? Or did they believe that by consuming their totem, they could absorb its strength, its cunning, its very essence?
At the same time, from the depths of this emerging consciousness, art was born. Deep within the silent, subterranean cathedrals of the earth, the first artists left their mark. Across Europe, Asia, and Africa, caves and grottos reveal a ghostly procession of bison, horses, and mammoths, rendered with astonishing realism. Alongside these figures are abstract symbols and geometric patterns, their meanings lost to time. Were they religious icons meant to ensure a successful hunt? Were they historical records, or simply the first expressions of a purely aesthetic impulse? We can only speculate. It is here, too, in the rhythm of a striking stone or a chanted story, that we might hear the faint, ghostly echo of the first music.
Having secured the fundamental needs of food and safety, the human mind was finally free to contemplate the eternal. This profound shift is most poignantly visible in their treatment of the dead. Burial rites grew more complex, more deliberate. The dead were no longer simply left to the elements. They were interred with care, accompanied by the tools, weapons, and ornaments they had used in life. This act speaks volumes. It reveals a burgeoning awareness of life and death, a nascent attempt to comprehend one's place in the cosmos. The presence of these grave goods also hints at something more practical, a surplus. For the first time, there was enough to spare for a journey unknown. The transition to active, organized hunting was the catalyst for this entire revolution. It provided more than just a meal. It yielded the thick hides needed for clothing and shelter, and the bones from which more sophisticated tools, deadlier weapons, and the first personal adornments were fashioned. Every sinew, every bone, every hide was a gift that propelled human ingenuity forward.
But its greatest contribution was a consistent source of high-energy protein, the very fuel that powered the expansion of the human brain. The hunter's gaze, fixed on a distant horizon, was not merely searching for prey. It was the first searching look into the future. A future that would be built, bone by bone, story by story, upon the foundation of their world.
It was, in the end, about meat. But it was the taming of fire that unlocked its true potential, transforming the raw flesh of the kill into a source of unparalleled energy. This alchemical process, cooking, allowed our ancestors to extract a maximum of calories with a minimum of effort, a crucial turning point in the human story.
The consequences were written onto our very bodies. With a diet of softened, cooked protein, the need for powerful chewing mechanisms diminished. The architecture of the hominid face began to change. Jaws, once massive and robust, started to recede. The powerful masticatory muscles that anchored them shrank. This was no mere cosmetic alteration. It was a radical reallocation of biological resources. The energy and physical space once dedicated to brute force digestion were freed, allowing for an unprecedented expansion of the cranial vault. The brain grew larger, more complex. This evolutionary trade-off was perhaps the single most important transaction in our history, setting the stage for our ascent as the planet's dominant intelligence.
Yet, the transformation was more than just physical. The relentless drive to perfect the hunt became a powerful engine for technological and social innovation. The pursuit of large, herd-based animals demanded more than individual strength. It demanded a new kind of mind. Strategic solutions were devised, tested, and passed down through generations. Our ancestors learned the deep arts of patience, of observation, of resourcefulness. They learned to read the landscape, to predict the movement of their prey, and to act with decisive efficiency in a world of constant change.
In the crucible of the hunt, they forged the first bonds of true society. A lone hunter was vulnerable, but a coordinated group was a formidable power. This necessity gave rise to complex communication, shared planning, and a profound sense of responsibility for the fate of the clan. They learned to assess risk not just for themselves, but for the collective. From this era, the hunt wove itself into the very fabric of culture and belief. It was carved onto cave walls, chanted in the first rituals, and immortalized in the myths and legends of every people on Earth. It became more than a means of survival. It was a symbol of courage, of strength, of a mastery over the wild world.
Even as the agricultural revolution began to dawn, shifting humanity from a nomadic existence to a settled one, the deep imprint of the hunter remained. The skills honed over hundreds of thousands of years, the ability to focus, to strategize, to cooperate under pressure, were not discarded. They were the bedrock upon which our civilizations were built. The ancient instincts, forged in the Stone Age, still echo within us, shaping our response to the complex, shifting landscapes of our own creation. The hunt may have ended, but the hunter's gaze, patient, calculating, and ever watchful, remains.